Yo, what's up, guys? Happy Halloween. This is probably gonna come out like an hour before fucking Halloween is over, but fuck it! Fuck it! I'm sorry. I made a little video on Facebook earlier about how I was annoyed that Halloween seemed to only last from like 5 o'clock in the afternoon to like 8. Isn't that usually when 7 or 8 when shit gets started? I don't know what the fuck's going on. Anyways, Halloween themed video. I had 2 videos planned, but for the main channel, I'm going to start off with this one. Fatal Frame, Maiden of the Black Water, First Impressions. I've played the first 4 drops, which I believe are, I guess, the first 4 chapters, which means I've played as every character. Granted, technically, I've only played as Miyu in the prologue, but fuck it, that's all I can do. So anything I tell you here isn't really spoiler much because all of it's pretty self-explanatory. The story seems to be is that Mount Ikame has become a very famous suicide spot due to some shenanigans that happened way back in the past. Each of the three main characters have a reason for being there. Miyu's looking for a mother. Yuri is looking for Hisoka. And Ren is looking for Kazuya. Miyu, mother. Hisoka is like the mother teacher type figure in Yuri's life, and Ren and Kazuya is a friend of his. That's the short version. There's some other things I can mention, but that's not really the point here. I wanted to talk about the gameplay for a second because, you know, the North American version has a lot of debacle shit with it because, for one, it's a digital only release. 2, it's the whole censoring of the 2 super skimpy outfits that are in it, which I don't really. And which was funny because this isn't like the first game to do this. I mean, Bravely Default did this. What was that? Back in 2013 with Adia and I think Agnes's costumes in the Japanese version. And hell, we just found out that Xenoblade's having the same level of censoring. But that's not the point. We're going to talk about that and talk about the gameplay. So to talk about the digital release thing, I don't understand why this is so offensive. And I understand the main point is that because the Wii U doesn't have as big as of a memory as the other 2 consoles, but realistically, if you've noticed, this is probably one of the biggest Nintendo games, and this shit is dwarfed by almost every other game on Xbox One or PlayStation 4. Like most of those games need at least 20 something gigs at a base, and then everything else is just past that. So I don't understand. Like people say, why is this game so big? It's not really big. I mean, if you compare it to other games, it's actually still small. It might be big for a Nintendo title because most Nintendo titles, I mean, fuck, what is it? Super Mario 3D World was like what 3 or 4 gigs. Like most of these games, and I don't understand why people were kind of bitching about the terabyte. You know, I mean the lack of a big hard drive, but like I'm hearing people are filling up the PlayStation 4 and it's like, oh, it's a digital only release. Well, I think we just found out what was that? That PlayStation 4 is a Vita game. I think it's like Gravity Rush or something. That originally was on the Vita. And it's coming to the PlayStation 4, but the North Americans are only getting a digital only copy. I don't like the whole concept of oh, it's digital only in an age where digital has become more of the standard. I find kind of ridiculous, and I understand. I would like a physical version of the game too. I'm not throwing that my shit at those who want a digital. I mean, want a physical version because I wouldn't mind owning a physical version of the game. I'm just saying boycotting the game for it's kind of ridiculous. Now, let's get into the actual content of the game. Censoring, I'm not going to talk about the censoring. It's just shit. This is one of those games, just like fucking Bravely Default, where it's so overtly Japanese that, like, those outfits, I could see pushing some shit. And granted, I think it's probably more offensive than, like, Fatal Frame and probably Fatal Frame more than anything because Fatal Frame is already a mature title, so I don't see. It's not like with Bravely Default where maybe it's the reason why they get to keep their rating in the States or some shit. Or maybe in Xenoblade that's the same reasoning. I don't know. Those outfits are definitely not no T for teen shit. That's probably some immature shit. I mean, it's like it's panties with like part of the front cut out, right above the shit that you should be covering anyway. So I could see why that might be one of the reasons why I got censored. Granted, I don't know that for a fact, but I'm just saying. Let's get to the nitty gritty of the game. Frame is a very difficult thing to talk about, and I think a good review of it, from what I've seen so far, is probably from Super Bunny Hop, so I'll leave his review in the description. It's one of those games that, like, on a technical level, you could never, like, give any praise to it. I mean, just like everyone says, the basic controls are clunky as fuck. It's such a when it's such a goddamn struggle to turn around and reset the camera behind you. That is fucking ridiculous. And the button to reset the camera behind you, it's not like you can turn your character one way and then hit the button and the camera will flip around. No, you're gonna have to fucking that doesn't reset the camera. That just repositions your character. Like let's say you're running forward and then you turn around for a second because you think you can see something, but you really want to keep running back in the previous direction. Instead of just turning around and then hitting the button for the camera to reset, no, you have to literally like you have to fucking point your camera in that direction, and then you can. It's like the damn button resets your character's position, not the camera's. And I'm like, well, what the fuck is the point of that? It's such an archaic game. Like the way this game, I think the best description of it. This game's controls feel like something from the GameCube, PlayStation 2 era, like a console generation that was fucking inhibited because of its control screen and because of the fucking platforms it was on. Like the GameCube and the PlayStation 2 couldn't handle as good a free form movement, and it feels like Final Frame 5 is one of those games that should be on those just through its controls. And it's funny because I feel like it's one of those games that went out of its way to set up everything, the atmosphere, the story. Because I'm engaged in the story. I like the story so far. The characters are fine. It's like the basic walking controls. Because if you go play with the gamepad, the fighting mechanics are legit as fuck. Like I don't really have any problems fighting ghosts with the gamepad and moving the R. Because people gotta realize, don't do that shit where you think the gamepad is the only way you're supposed to shoot these ghosts. You can, but you won't get far because the game is designed in a way that allows you to use the the right analog stick to move your body and to move the camera in the position of the ghost. And then really all you have to do is just kind of tilt in that general direction. Like let's say this is the box, but you got ghosts coming from 360 degrees. Instead of having to do this, you can just use the right analog trigger that will just position you in that area. And at that point, you're just still doing the basic in that box. So it's nowhere near as hard as you think it is. The combat is legit as fuck. I like the combat. It's actually pretty fun, especially when you get into it. The walking controls are so archaic, and it's slow. It's a slow-paced game. So if you're not fans of slow-paced games, don't touch this shit. It's one of those games. The best way I can describe it is that it teeters on this line to the point where it makes you wonder. And I'm still more liable to say it's just a rush game, if anything, because of the other shit that's wrong with it. But it's one of those things where you almost think the control design is the way it is because it's intentionally the way it is. Like it's intentionally done in an archaic manner. I would think this if some of the elements that don't, because I feel like it's supposed to add to the atmosphere. It's like, why is it that your run button, why is it that you move so slow? Well, you shouldn't be running in a fucking forest full of ghosts anyway. Like, it's like the way this game is positioned, the way the game is set up, it makes sense. It's like, yeah, you shouldn't be running every fucking where. You should be walking slow. Even the whole, slow motion grab for an item, it's all to build the atmosphere and it works. And the controls, although archaic as fuck, feel like it's lending itself to that atmosphere, except for things like turning the camera around is just way too fucking slow. Even just normally turning the camera is slow as fuck. And I set my sensitivity up to the highest setting you could, and it still feels like it's lagging out. Like it's like I hit the button, I wait like 5-10 seconds. Oh, there it goes. So it's like you don't. It's one of those games that I feel like some part of the design may be intentional. Other parts, I think like the game is just rushed. And then when you see things like the graphics, like for example, I'll go ahead and say the escort missions, the escort parts of the game where you're navigating a friend back to home base. Those are like the sections that really show the glitchiness of the game because these fuckers, for one, like not only follow you, but like they will glitch into situations. Like I remember it was in the fourth chapter, and you're in the house where all the dolls are, and I reached for an item in this small ass room, and the girl glitched in front of me, So it looks like my hand's going through her stomach while reaching for the item. Luckily, I didn't get grabbed because that would have been 3 or 4 fucking things that would have just looked fucking ridiculous. I was very tempted to take a picture of it, or to post a shot to me first, but it's fucking ridiculous. The game is like that type of glitchy where it's like it's almost it feels like an old school game, and then like as a horror, it's more about building suspense and setting up atmosphere and tension than it is. It has jump scares in it, but it's not like all the fucking time. And the way this game controls like jump scares are actually really terrifying in this game because of that. Because it's not like you can just easily hit the run button. Like no, because even the run button, it's a slow start. It's like a and even when you're running, you're not running super fast. You're like doing this. It's like a brisk jog. This is what you're doing. The game also has other cool mechanics like the tainted water thing. I've heard some people in the reviews say that there was no point in putting it on because there's certain points in the game, and there are certain points in the game, but I think it's designed that way. It's designed to put you in a higher state of fear because the wetter, no joke, no pun intended here, but the wetter you are in situations, the more dangerous it is. Like it's explained in the game that when you're reaching for items, you're more likely to have the ghost hand come up and try to grab you when you're wet, and you start taking damage if you're like fully drenched and shit. And so there are some parts in the game in which you're traversing through a whole bunch of water, in which you like the last chapter I played, chapter 4, you had to go through like this underwater basement bullshit, and it's like, well, of course you wouldn't use the fucking torch here because as soon as you use it, you're gonna get wet again. I mean, that's just common fucking sense. And then and I'm pretty sure they're referring to the whole, but it's raining in some scenes. That's intentional. It's intentionally trying to make you more susceptible to being caught by these fucking ghosts, which puts you in more battles. That's the whole fucking design. And for some reason, people thought that, for some reason I saw in the reviews, they were like, oh, I don't see the point of the items and the shit's worthless. The one thing I will say that bugs the fuck out of me, there's like 4 different ways to get to the pause screen, and they're like all variations of the same damn screen. You can hit the start button, which I think brings up the map. You can hit the minus button, which brings up the pause menu, which, by the way, is not the same fucking menu as like there's like 2 different menus for pausing the game and looking at your maps and shit. So like, why is the bring up the maps and the items and the camera and upgrading it and shit? And then you have the minus button or the pause button, whichever. I think it's the pause button. The pause button that brings up the obvious, save and shit, and then minus button brings up the map. I don't know why I found this way more annoying, because I was like, I would think it would just be in the pause menu. It's like you would think the pause menu would have the maps, the pause, in the chapter. Maybe you would need to go somewhere, save game, leave game, all that type of shit. No, it's like 3 separate fucking buttons. Why? It's for your items and cameras and shit. Pause is for your fucking, it's for your, pause is for like your, pause in-game bullshit, and then minus is for, hey man, let me go look at your map. Even though you can toggle the map on and off in the fucking, on the gamepad. So I don't see the point of having a map button. Whatever, it's fucking fine. I don't know why that kind of bugged me, because it took me a minute to realize how that shit worked. Like, I felt like I was confused why I only like I hit a pause, like I just don't, I'm not used to there being 2 separate pause menus, and that's essentially what it is. It's a pause menu for your items and shit, and then there's a pause menu for the, this in-game pause game settings shit. There are 2 different menus. Bugs the fuck out of me. I'm trying to think, is there anything else to really talk about? I do like the different mechanics and the different lenses you can get. Like, you can get one that does double damage. You can get one that allows you to absorb enemy spirits, which raises your health back. And I think there's one that lets you shoot further distance. And then Ren's camera, which allows you to take multi-shots, which really, I feel like his is like set up in a way that's like a fucking fatal frame camera. It's like the fatal frame camera in the sense that you get to take multiple shots in a row, except you can just do it anytime you want to, which there's a level of strategy there, because you can actually set up combos and shit. I haven't been able to do it yet, but it's essentially going, because the whole gimmick is that, you don't really do any staggering type of damage until you get 5 things on the screen and you take a shot of it. Which is what you need to fucking do is with Ren's camera, I feel like it's to set it up. Like, you take the first 3 shots, I feel like are just meant to get all the extra little health spirit orbs around the damn thing. and then the fourth one is like to get the combo. But it's kind of hard to do. I've seen people do it. It's fucking legit as hell when you can get it done, when you can get it off. I'm just saying I can't fucking do it. The traversing the old areas, which I've already done, you're gonna do that a lot. I still feel the tension because you're not, because you feel like you're doing something new. Like for Ren's, like I think in the prologue you visit the old building and shit. Well, you visit it again as Ren, but you're doing something. I wouldn't say you're doing something. You're still traversing the same area, but they've added you can go further with Ren. It seems like than you can with Yuri, which is the other girl you're playing as. It's like Yuri, Miyu, Ren. Yuri will mainly. I've only really been playing as Yuri and Ren. I do like that. The traversing the old areas thing. I know why people say that gets slow and repetitive, and I heard this game drags, but which is kind of funny considering it takes like a full 10 seconds to open a fucking door in this game. So it's like the game drags, and I'm sitting there with this look on my face, like, well, considering how long it takes to I didn't think this game was fast paced. So that's the thing. If you're not a fan of if you can't play old school games for shit, don't even touch this. Like the controls are literally, the level design is set up in a way that it doesn't even bother you. That's what kills me. It's like one of those games that in any other game, if you had this kind of control, you fucking hate it. This level of control only works in horror games. And that's one of the reasons why it's not that big of an issue, because you kind of learn how to deal with it. Because you realize how limited you are, you don't overly rely on movement. Like, you just understand that when you take certain steps and you go certain areas, you fucking dedicated yourself to the shit. You have no choice now, because to run away from fucking something takes like 20 seconds. And in a game in which a ghost can run up and grab you is fucking nuts. I also like the dodge mechanic. It's a very interesting but like scary mechanic, because the dodge mechanic requires you to back out of camera mode and then hit the dodge button again, which is the B button. So you have to hit B like twice to duck, and that means you're kind of guessing because you can't see when you're using the gamepad. You don't see the dodge icon come up. It's really just the red flashing lights and shit. You only see it when you in like your normal third-person view mode. It's really, I like the game. I like the game, but it's one of those games you have to play in chunks. And considering I heard the game drags, that kind of doesn't help it. I would say if you're into Japanese titles, you probably would be into it. It's one of those games I feel like that if you have looked at it and you weren't interested already, you're probably not going to touch it. I would say definitely at least if you were somewhat interested, wait for a price drop. I feel like $50 is one of those. On a technical level, it is not worth $50. On a technical level alone, it's not worth on $50 because the controls are archaic as fuck. But if you're used to old school horror games and you're used to old school controls, like being limited as fuck in your control, and as I said, the level design is set up in a way that you can adapt to it. It's one of the few instances I can say you can adapt to like shitty controls, because it is shitty controls. I can't fucking turn around properly. I gotta do this fucking ring around the road. I gotta do like a half circle to turn around. I can't just flip over. I gotta fucking and then I can turn around. It's fucking nuts. But I like the game. I like the game so far. I don't regret spending $50 for it. But as I said, you kind of have to be into this shit anyway. Like, it has to at least intrigue you. If you've seen gameplay footage of Fatal Frame Made in the Black Water or Fatal Frame 5, and you are not at least intrigued by it, don't even bother, because you're not gonna like it. This is like for the type of Japanese gamer who likes old school Resident Evil type shit. Like, which is funny because this is like one of the first horror games I played in so long. But for some reason I'm having fun with it, and I like the story. I'm not a huge fan that I've gone through like 4 chapters and I've had the same thing happen to me twice. I'm not gonna spoil what that is, but I hope it doesn't keep on that regiment. But we'll see. I've heard kind of mixed things about the fucking views of the game, like in terms of its story. So far it seems intriguing enough. I will say the argument with the English dub, I don't see the hate. A lot of people don't like the dub, but maybe I don't know what it is. I'm just not that mean against dubs because it's not bad. It's not like I'm listening. I think the facial animations are stiff as fuck, but then again, this game is supposed to be somber as hell. In Japanese display, it's the same problem. It's the same thing about Other M that people say, oh, these characters' faces are emotionless. And you're sitting there going, and as an anime fan, someone who's seen these characters, I'm like, she's not emotionless. She's just super stoic and reserved. Like, she's intentionally cutting off her emotions. This game is just more like Other M. It was the same argument I had. Anime characters do that. Like that's what they do in Japanese design when they try to show off stoic characters. Those are the characters that just aren't that. They don't have expressive faces. And some people think it's like oh, he's just talking like this and nothing else is moving. So that actually that's just hard. Um, that's just the way they animate characters who are like that. And in a game that's all about suicide, I would assume they wouldn't be expressive. But I don't mind the English dub. I don't have a problem with the English dub. I don't have a problem with the facial animations like some people do because I've watched enough anime to understand that's just how they do that stoic look. So it's the same thing for Other M, as I said. It's just that's my opinion. But please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. If you're interested in the game, as I said, if you're into Japanese games, if this game at least interests you, and you don't have the money or the drive space for it now, I say wait for a price drop. I feel like if it was $30, I could easily recommend it to the niche fans. But if you, part of me says it's not really worth $50 because you can tell the game is technically flawed, and you can also this also explains why Nintendo was super hesitant about really talking or releasing it because it's not a game that really stands up to their quality standards. I'll be surprised if Double Stir gets any type of American treatment, nor do I think it's going to, considering how weak that game looks. Except, as I said, Fatal Frame's Fatal Frame shittiness is kind of saved by the way the game is designed because a horror game lends itself better to shitty controls than fucking an action game like Double Stir will. But that's just my thoughts. I don't, as I said, if you don't have the money or the drive speed, it's a game you can wait on. I feel like the best time to get this game is on a sale. But, and I'll leave a link to Super Bunny Hop's review of the full game in the description because I feel like it kind of perfectly sums up how this game is. It's technically flawed beyond belief, but there's a charm to it, and it appeals to the old school horror fan or the old school design in general. But anywho, and also great gamepad usage. So leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. Happy Halloween, and I will talk to you guys later. Peace all.